So we've been talking about ecosystems, and we've been studying in class ecosystems. We've been looking at abiotic and biotic factors. And today we want to talk about what, to me, I think this is very interesting. And to you, you're a little bit younger, a lot younger, so this won't mean so much now, but it will later, is how do our ecosystems get here? Why is it what we have here, why is it that we have a woods, for example, out by the pond area? Why do we have a field over here? And this comes back to the idea of something called succession. Succession. There are two basic types of succession. The first one is called primary succession. Primary succession is a new ecosystem where there was none before. This is important. A new ecosystem where there was none before. Example, a volcano erupts in the ocean, and now you have an island. That would be, okay, so now you have a new island. The new island wasn't there before. This is how the Hawaiian Islands came about. They're volcanic islands. So a volcano erupts, and all the lava piles up, and now you have this island of rock. That's how Hawaii started. Or maybe, as happened here a few thousand years ago at the end of the Ice Age, the glaciers melted back. And what was under the glaciers was just rock. There was nothing else. So the glaciers do what we call recede, or fall back, and what's left is rock, and eventually you're going to get organisms growing there. So you start with rock, and that rock gets changed to soil by something called pioneer species. Organisms called lichens. Lichens are really good pioneer species. Lichens grow on rock, and with our video we're watching at the beginning of the hour every day, if we haven't seen lichens by now, we will very soon. Okay? But once you have soil, now you can grow something, and now you can grow something in it. And you're thinking, well, that's kind of strange, but you can't really think of this way. But if you think about, say, a parking lot, which is all rock, essentially, it's rock that we've taken and put together to make concrete. Anywhere there's a little bit of a crack, plants grow. The other day I was walking down the pier in Grand Haven, and about 3/4 of the way out down the pier, if you look in the cracks of the pier, there's plant growing, there's grasses growing. And most people like that go, oh, I don't get it, what's the big deal? But you're out in the middle of the lake. The pier goes out into the lake. There's no dirt there. So these plants are growing in the cracks. And so because those plants are growing in the cracks, because dirt is washed down in there. And so once you have soil, lots of things can grow because they can put down roots. Okay, so the important thing is to get the rock changed to soil, and then once you have soil, you can grow lots of things. Here's an animation of primary succession. You start with rock, then you get a few plants, and you get some flowers, then you get some big trees. We'll come back to that. Number 2 is called secondary succession. Secondary succession is when you have an ecosystem and it changes over time. Couple examples. A forest fire. You have a forest fire burns it all. What's going to grow back there? Not necessarily the same forest, as we'll see. Maybe a pond dries up. In your book, there in the biology textbook, there's an example of what happens when a pond dries up. Or there's unused farmers' fields. If you drive down any street here for a few miles, if you head to Ravenna, if you head to Conklin, or if you head to Grand Rapids and you're driving down these back roads, not the highway, and you look, you'll notice there are fields that don't have trees in them yet, but aren't being used for anything. And they'll be at different stages of succession, which we'll come back to. Okay? So the unused farmer field, maybe an unused parking lot. Usually, when we look at these ecosystems, we are looking at them in the middle of succession. What we get when it's done, or what we call the end, is something called a climax community. Although there's arguments here about whether there's really an end or not. I'll put a little question mark after end. It's called a climax community, which is usually large trees. And it depends on where you live what the climax community is. If you live here in Michigan, the climax community is what we call a beech maple forest. Mostly American beech and sugar and red and silver maple trees. There will be other trees too. If you were to go to Illinois, you'd get an oak hickory forest. If you were to go to Florida, you would get palm trees because it's subtropical. If you were to go to Central America, you get tropical rainforest is the climax community. Now the key here is that this is not a permanent thing. This is not a permanent thing. Okay? The climax community can constantly change. Trees die, other trees grow. Okay? The environment changes a little bit, so you get a slightly different kind of tree growing, whatever. But here in Michigan, our climax community tends to be a beech maple forest. A couple examples. Here's a plowed field, and the farmer decides he's not going to farm it anymore or sells it or whatever, and the first thing you get growing in that field are grasses. Whoops, I'll show you these pictures in a minute. Are grasses. Then you get some flowers and some other kinds of grasses. Then you might get some blackberries and raspberries, and you'll see this in a field where as they get blackberry, as if you quit mowing, let's say, part of your yard, you'll start with some taller weeds and stuff, and pretty soon blackberries will grow. And then what will eventually happen is you'll start to get some very fast-growing, like poplar trees. Around here we call them popple trees, fast-growing trees. And then eventually, now this is shown in the south a little bit, you'll get what's called these very large trees. If we let a field just grow out here, we would eventually get very large trees. Okay, here's a series of pictures of a farmer's field taken over time. Okay, this is the first year after the farmer quit farming it. This is the second year after the farmer quit farming it. If you could see, this isn't very good, but you can see that there would be corn stalks scattered in here, but grasses are starting to grow. Okay, here's the fifth year, and you can't really tell this, but the grasses are getting taller. And now this one you can really tell. This is 10 years, I believe it says. The 10th year, now you got little shrubs, you got some blackberry bushes, okay, starting to fill in. You can't really see this, but the forest is starting to move. Actually, you're getting trees growing on the edge of the forest. And now, here, 20 years, you can't even see that it was a field, really. Now you got taller, shrubby trees. Maybe these are 10, 12 feet high, and you got weeds growing in between there. And so that's what succession is. We can also see succession here in Michigan on a sand dune. If you start on the beach and walk back on a sand dune, okay, you start getting those little grasses, then you get some, like, pricker bushes and little shrubs and stuff like that. Eventually, you run into a pine forest, the back of a sand dune. Okay? That succession also is driven by the lake. So, how ecosystems get here. To review, we were talking about how do our ecosystems get here. And what happens is they constantly change over time, and it's called succession.